that Lucas and I are doing is something called the Mod Qual. Now, this is actually a qualification I've done numerous times throughout my time in MARSOC, and this is a military qualification that qualifies guys both on rifle and pistol, done individually. So basically what this allows guys to do, or qualifies guys to do, is use real guns during CQB training inside of a shoot house. The reason why Lucas and I are shooting this qualification is really for two main reasons. So first and foremost, the main reason is the gear requirement behind this qualification. So in order to shoot this qualification, it's not intended to be shot slick with just a speed belt and just your rifle, you know, with no helmet or anything like that. This qualification is intended to be shot in the full equipment that you're expected to be wearing, regardless of what your role is on the team, while you go into a real life scenario in a shoot house or possibly even on deployment. So that being said, as you guys see, we're using new plate carriers. We're using AC0s and AC15s, and we wanted to demonstrate and also for ourselves just exercise the flexibility of the new plate carriers. So we use this opportunity to clone MARSOC type issued equipment, and I even cloned the exact kit that I wore when I was on the team. So if you guys want a full breakdown of our kit, not only of our kit, but also our guns and kind of the why we set things up, make sure you check out our Armory YouTube channel where we go over the full breakdown of the kit. But just to note that the main reason why we chose this qualification is because of that gear requirement behind the qualification. The second main reason why we decided to do this qualification is because military rifle and pistol quals are generally just leave a lot to be desired. They usually are pretty easy shooting standards that they don't require a lot of aggressive shooting or a lot of practical shooting. They emphasize more on the safety side of things, and they also tend to develop poor habits within shooters in order for them to be able to pass the qualification. Given the very generous time standard on the strings of fire for this qualification, you'd expect a very difficult target. However, that's not exactly the case. The targets that Lucas and I used were just traditional USPSA targets, and we scored this just on alpha hits. So if we got an alpha hit, we got a hit, and if it was outside the alpha, it was considered a miss. Now the actual target for this is a big bowling pin type target, so if Lucas and I used that target, we probably would have only dropped 1 to maybe 3 rounds each, both on daytime and nighttime course of fire. But that's something that the teams are actually doing right now, is they're not doing this during the pipeline training, as in when students are going through training and trying to make it to a team, but the teams themselves are using USPSA targets to make this qualification a little bit harder. Now that is one thing I think would be a very easy fix to this qualification to make it a very hard qualification standard, and is just changing the target to a USPSA target and only considering alpha hits as good. Because when Lucas and I did that, we barely passed the 80% standard. I think we were both right around 80 to 82%, both on daytime and nighttime shooting. More preferably, however, I would just prefer the entire course of fire to be nixed and replaced with something like CQB warm-up from the Practical Shooting Training Group. This is a very, very aggressive course of fire that's done honestly much quicker, evaluates much more skills comparatively to this entire qualification, and you can tailor it to be done during night and day, et cetera, et cetera. That qualification, again, focuses on more of a practical type shooting, so pushing the speed, pushing the aggression, and the time standards and the hits that you need to pass that are actually difficult, even for me at my shooting level nowadays. Move. Move. Move.
Which is allowed. Was I in time?
Move. Move.
7 and 5.
Now, before I give my opinion on this, I just want to mention 3 things. First and foremost, I was in MARSOC. I love the community, so obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased. All right. So second thing is the skills that are required of guys to be on the team in addition to what's going on here. So when it comes down to very high level practical shooting, and that is the sole role of the members on the team, that is really only for tier 1 direct action type units. When it comes down to the vanilla soft level, like MARSOC, SEALs, and Green Berets and stuff like that, shooting, yes, it is obviously important, but it is not the main priority, the main skill set of the guys on the team. This is generally like less than 5% of what is required of guys on the team. So just keep in mind that the number of skills that is required to be on the teams is very, very high, and this is just one of the very, very many skills that are required. So don't expect grandmaster proficiency out of all the guys on these teams, because again, there's a lot of skills that are required. When it comes down to the way we kill people on deployments, there is a lot more tools that we are required to be able to know how to use and know how to use very well, aside from CQB shooting. The third and final point I want to make before I give my opinions on the qualification itself is what it takes to actually be on a team. So all of these guys have been assessed and selected. This is a very rigorous process. This is something that takes a lot of just he who dares to even go to selection to begin with. All of these guys have achieved very high levels of physical fitness, and they've also achieved something called composure. This is something that you can only get through hard, rigorous training. This is not something you can just go out to the flat range and practice or dry fire through. These are things that are very, very valuable to being on the team and being a team member. This is what builds trust and what builds, in fact, the team itself. It's not so much the shooting.
Good to go. In time.
Like I mentioned before, I did this qual quite a bit while this was my job, actually, in MARSOC on the teams, and I was doing it in the context of because I had to, right? I had to pass this qual so I can serve and be on the team and serve the role that I was supposed to serve on the team. Now, as I'm doing it as a practical shooter, also technically for work, my opinion and views and my view on it has changed obviously quite a bit. I wasn't so focused on the shooting as much before when I was on the teams, but now obviously I shoot for work, so critiquing the shooting is definitely of a higher priority to me now. However, when it comes down to the shooting standards and the times associated with this, we have to understand what the qualification is qualifying guys for. So what this qualification is doing is it's assessing the consistency and the safety of the shooters primarily over their aggressive practical type shooting. So on the safety side of things, all we're looking for is that shooters complete the qualification without flagging anyone or anything like that. This is done online with a bunch of different shooters. There is some shooting and moving alongside of other people. So again, as long as you don't flag anyone, you don't do anything unsafe, whether it's how you transition your gun or anything like that. That's all we're looking for on the safety side of things. Now on the consistency side of things, the time standards for each string and fire aren't that hard to make. However, if you make a mistake, like I did during the standing, kneeling, and prone to get into a poor prone position, or like I did during the night portion of it where I inserted a magazine with 31 rounds compared to 30 and the magazine fell out when I didn't want it to, those two things caused me to fail the time standard for those two specific strings of fire. So yes, the time standards are pretty easy to make. However, you have to be consistent. There's not much room for error throughout the entire qualification. So overall, yes, a lot of military rifle and pistol quals do leave a lot to be desired. There's a lot of just silly things going on with them, and they are generally very easy. And putting my bias aside, considering I came from the MARSOC community, I think the MARSOC mod qual is decent. I don't think it's great. I think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement on it. If it can be replaced by something more practical like CQB warm-up, that'd be ideal, or at least just making the target harder so you don't run into things like the bowling pin target where when you're called to make a headshot and you yank your rounds down because you over anticipate or you just have poor recoil control, you still get a hit because the neck counts as a hit. Things like that that can be improved on to make this qualification better.
Shut up, go away. You know, oh, they've been on this whole time. They're fried. Oh.